Hello, Nerds from the Underground viewers. It's at Chaz Simons here again to kick off the first day of our horror-themed Shocktober. Now, that means that this month what we're going to be doing is dialing into some really great classic stories from EC Comics. We're both all big fans, both Poet Air and I, and a lot of the other guys are all big fans of the EC Comics Fanographic Library Editions. These are some really cool collections that feature some incredible trade dress. They look great on a shelf, but they're loaded with these classic EC stories. And what those were, they were very socially conscious and relevant and very creepy and entertaining stories that ran the gambit of horror, science fiction, crime, and all sorts of other stuff. They're just great, and they're, like I had mentioned in our sort of preview video, they're all just as relevant today, I think, as they were then. EC Comics began as educational comics, and when Bill Gaines inherited it, he changed it to entertaining comics, and they focused a bit more on sensationalist stories and things like that, but they all definitely had a very clear moral message, I think, that lend them some relativity, or some lasting staying power. The biggest thing about these that I think is really cool is the art in them was just astounding. Some beautiful line work, some incredible inks. Fantagraphics is reprinting them all in black and white, so it loses a little bit of that color element, but the black and white also helps juxtapose a little bit of the horror and the scenes of war and some of the crime stuff a little bit stronger. It adds another element of terror to it in a way that sometimes color can remove you from. So that's a little bit of backstory on this. The Came the Dawn and Other Stories, this one here, was the first volume of this EC Graphics, Fantagraphics library collection that I had ever picked up. It was awesome. I read it on a long plane flight, just cover to cover. It's got some of my favorite Wally Wood stories in there. Some that also got collected into a big artist edition that I have of his work that I'm definitely going to bring out in one of the upcoming videos. But the one I wanted to kick off our Shocktober event with was in this book. It's called Horror in the Freak Tent. And this one was a Tales of Terror, I think, originally. But it was written by Feldstein, and then art, of course, by Wally Wood. And the reason that I chose this one is it reminded me of another October favorite of mine, Todd Browning's Freaks. It's a 1930s film that is both startling and very aware. And it's a revenge story about a horrible... he's the strongman of the circus who's in love with the trapeze artist. And also, one of the freaks from the freak show is in love with this trapeze artist as well. And she is using him for his money, the freak. And the startling part about this movie is that he used all real people from freak shows. So all of their deformities, all of their things, that's all really their people, like the people themselves. It's not makeup and special effects or anything like that. But the true villains of the story aren't the freaks themselves. They're very banded together as a family, and when you hurt one, you hurt them all. And in this Horror in the Freak Tent, you get very similar vibes. This one is about a very popular knife thrower at a circus who does not care for the way that the owner of the traveling carnival is treating the freaks. He treats them as sort of less than human, very belittling, very angry, very... the way that you don't treat regular people even. So it's even worse when you're doing it to somebody that you know you have some sort of power over. He ends up, the owner of the freak show, of the carnival, ends up driving a wedge between the knife thrower and his partner, the woman who gets the knives thrown at her, and she leaves him, and that really sort of puts the knife thrower over the edge. He doesn't like the way that he's treating the freaks. He doesn't like the way that he's being treated, and he speaks up for himself. He finally lays down the law. It's not going to happen anymore. He's got to treat them better. He's got to do better. And in return, the owner decides that what would be better would be to just blind this man. So he blinds him with a hot poker and takes essentially his skills and his job away. But in true Freaks fashion, they all come together. They bandage up his eyes. They keep him safe. They help him practice throwing knives now by visualizing where the dummy is, by basically trying to utilize some sort of daredevil skill where he's using his other senses and he's responding to the cues and he's practicing on a dummy. A new partner in the carnival comes to see what's been going on, and he watches essentially what's the night before the main performances act is going to be. And you only see the back of the board where he's throwing the knives, but the freaks in the carnival are all telling him, "Oh, you're so close. A little up and a little left." And he throws another knife. "Oh, you almost had it. A little to the right with this one. You're almost there." And he throws another knife. Now the knife thrower believes that this is a dummy that he's throwing at, because there would be no real person that would want to put themselves in a blind man's knife throwing path without some serious witnessing of their skill. So as the new owner comes around the bend, we witness the final knife being thrown, this big giant butcher knife with a loud shock right into the skull of the previous abusive owner. We find out that the freaks had bound and gagged the owner and had put him up as the dummy in this thing and had egged on this blind knife thrower to get their revenge. And so at all times, everybody sort of is satisfied. The freaks no longer are being abused by this horrible, horrible man. The blind knife thrower now has gotten his revenge in a way that he doesn't even know and potentially might never even know, in murdering the man who took not only his eyes, but his wife and partner. The only one who really loses in this is the man that witnesses it all, that sees this murder and now has to live with it. But he also knew just how terrible that man was. So hopefully he'll move on and treat these people as more than objects in a carnival or items to be ogled, and treat them as the people that they are, deformities and all, because that's what it's all about, is treating everybody with respect. And if they want to perform and put themselves out there in that way to earn a bit of money, then they deserve to be treated with the respect of a person and less of an like I said, an item or a animal in a zoo, if you will. So, but that was the Horror in the Freak Tent. It was very, very good. You can find it in Came the Dawn and Other Stories by Wally Wood and Al Feldstein. That story was. The art by Wally Wood in it is really, really good. The freaks in it, and I'm a little loath to use that word, but it's how they're described in this book, are all drawn in a way that makes them very compassionate. They're not drawn in a way that's encouraging you to be startled or to be afraid of them, but they're drawn very much as people, just maybe a little bit different than the way that we would look, a little bit exaggerated, a little bit stretched, maybe a little bit played around with, but they're not drawn in a way that they're horrific and we have to turn our eyes from, that they're too much for society or anything like that. So the treatment that they receive at the hands of this very mean carnival owner, I think, reflected well in that as far as the art goes. And like I said, the story, very reminiscent of Todd Browning's Freaks, another great one. If you haven't seen that movie and you're looking for a very good Halloween watch, I recommend that you check it out. It is very, very interesting and very, very fun. And who knows, it might become a yearly tradition for you as well. So that was the first installment of our Shocktober event. We'll have even more coming. I believe Poet Air 33 is working on his right now. Potentially in the future, we're hoping to do some combination videos where we'll both be on and have a little bit more of a back and forth. But yeah, so hopefully you enjoyed this, and stay tuned for more very shocking and creepy things coming. All right, thanks. Bye.